You're gonna run it from here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then when we get to 9F,
Yeah.
you'll need to run it from there. If
And I'll
you,
hand it right back over.
if you want, you can go down and tell Tanya. She might be able to add it in.
Wayne just did actually.
Oh, okay.
Let's see if it popped in there. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's on there.
Yep. We have reconvened at 5:31 from executive session. Item 4 is agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. We have to make a motion, right, and then discuss?
No. just
Okay.
motion to amend.
I'm going to make a motion to add action item 9F to approve the attorney's response to a complaint.
Question, do we need to say we're just approving the letter?
Just a
But we also have to, do we also have to,
No, just approve the letter.
Okay.
Then we'll go for discussion.
okay, perfect, thank you.
Need a second.
Do we have a second?
Second,
So we have Megan with the second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 5, consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept it in its entirety, or does anyone want to pull an item out of the consent agenda? Terry with the motion,
I'll second.
Aaron with the second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 6, open forum. Open forum is an opportunity for patrons to share their thoughts and concerns. The school board will listen, but no discussion takes place, and there will not be board action. Board members may ask clarifying questions. The protocol established for open forum is to provide a time limit of 3 minutes to share concerns. If a patron would like to have a two-way discussion, they are encouraged to schedule a meeting with the superintendent. Appropriate and respectful public decorum is expected. Any complaints about school employees should refer to the school board policy KL, complaint against school employee. Tanya, do we have anybody for open forum?
Yes, we have Kelly Whirlinger.
And once your 3 minutes is up, I'll just raise my hand to let you know.
Good evening, board members. My name is Kelly Whirlinger. I've been the location manager of Harlow's school bus services here in Sturgis since the beginning of October. Regardless of what position I acquired throughout the years, Meade School District has gotten my very best. Under my supervision, recruiting drivers has been a nonstop priority. Since September, we have had 70 applications come through. Out of those 70, I was unable to contact 21. 13 stated the pay range was insufficient, 14 stated issues with scheduling, 10 could not make it through the permitting process, 3 had injuries that prevented them from moving forward, including 2 that permitted in December, and 4 are struggling with their permit testing. 2 are moving in from out of state. We've hired 6 drivers and 2 office staff since October, making sure we provide the district with safe, proficient drivers. Harlow's has been sending drivers from different locations, doing everything in our power to support the district needs. Our new office staff have been paramount in our smooth operation of our facility in the past months. I've been working on improving several areas within our facility. I've developed a maintenance program, working on being proactive with our buses. We're also disciplining and retraining our staff upon concern immediately, using the current information we have in Route Finder. We can more effectively design routes to predict busing needs for the district while considering mileage, shifting student numbers, and capacity concerns. Having more experience with the capabilities and the limitations of Route Finder, we will be more prepared for the potential issues of routing next year. This is experience you will lose with the change of providers. Harlow's has the experience and knowledge to appropriately serve the district when fully staffed. We travel over 2,000 miles of Meade County daily. We know where the problem areas are and how to handle them. working with the county to correct roads that need our attention. Did you put your arm up? Okay, sorry. Our office staff are up at 3 a.m. to begin conducting road surveys from Boulder Canyon to Oakville. We do our best to predict weather patterns using several points of reference and communicate with the superintendent to determine appropriate action for weather-related issues. We pivot for the unexpected issues we've learned to anticipate through experience, and if we haven't anticipated it, we pivot harder. I feel that it would be a disservice to our district to lose this experience when so much effort has been made to correct the past issues and such an increase in service has been seen in such a short time. Thank you for your time and patience this evening and all days while we maneuver out of old patterns and create a new relationship with Meade School District.
Thank you.
Francis Ham.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak here this evening. Nice to meet you, members of the board. My name is Francis Ham. I'm the Regional Director of Operations for Harlow School Bus. I am not based here locally. I'm based out of Idaho. I've taken over the region for Harlow's West in July of this year, just shortly before the 25-26 school year. I was made very much aware of issues in the past of what Harlow's has done and relationships with customers where we had not met what we should have been doing. Really, ultimately, is what it was. So we have made several changes within our organization. Michelle Tabor, who is the region VP, she was new into Harlow's. I came in July, evaluated my region, and immediately started taking action here in Sturgis. There was a management change. Kelly has done a fantastic job stepping up into that role. In working with Kelly, I've assisted and through the interview process to get additional support in the office. Today, she has a very good assistant manager and a dispatcher. And as far as support goes, we were down on drivers. We were way down on drivers. In efforts to recruit and bring drivers in, Harlow's as an organization, I brought in drivers from Eastern South Dakota to help support, brought drivers in from Oregon to help support. All Harlow's drivers, all went through our safety programs, everything, so I knew we had good drivers coming in, and we were still short. And I do realize we were being supported in that, but we did every effort that we could to support the school and the district community as well. So today we're at a point where we are just about completely staffed, and we're looking for an opportunity to continue the relationship, keep growing the relationship. Part of our proposal also had pretty significant rate increases for drivers, and those will remain, even with the last quoted rates. So those are people that live here in the community, and we want to make sure that we're taking care of those drivers as well. Questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item 7, recognitions. 7A, character education word of the month. The character education trait for the month of January is respect, which includes honor, tolerance, consideration, self-respect, respect for others, and respect for property. Item 8, presentations. 8A, science curriculum adoption. Beth Johnson.
Hello, I'm here tonight to talk to you about the science curriculum adoption for the Meade School District. And I'm going to be telling James to go ahead and slide through here. But before I talk about the adoption, I just wanted to take a moment to recap our curriculum outlay budget for curriculum. It's the 421 budget line item. And we had a series of contracts that expired. I mentioned this last year when we adopted social studies, and I just wanted to give you an update of where we are. So with this adoption for science, we will not be paying for an additional year. That's a plus 0 years for our staff. And next month, I'll be up here talking to you about K-5 ELA adoption recommendations, so that's another 0 year. But we still have 612 ELA with 1 additional year. What that means is that because the contract has expired, we have to pay for a 1 year continuance to keep using the tool in the classroom. And because all of our adoptions were delayed with our social studies, with COVID, all of those things, the ripple effect was wide. And it does create a larger or inflated curriculum budget. So you can see ELA for 612, we've got 1 additional year. Under that 1 year, you see 60,000 K for current and 40,000 for pilot. Our teachers are discussing not renewing our current, but rather using those funds instead to try out another curriculum. And then math is the one that follows, and that is a 2 year, and the cost to renew math is $120,000 per year. That's for the online curriculum platform. With this plan here, we're hoping to knock 2 of those out with FY26 purchase for science and FY27 for K-5 ELA. So I'll bring that to you next month in the hope that we can provide training for staff on March 19th. So a spring training, and then we'll review it again in the fall. Next slide. Thank you. So in total, the budgeted curriculum for this school year was $584,461. The cost to continue those expired contracts came in at $158,330. Or I'm sorry, $158,330. And so that leaves, then the cost for assessment platforms and pilots came in at $61,729. And so the remainder from that initial budget is $364,402. And that's what I'm using for our science adoption. So that money is there, it's for science adoption, and we'll see that number again at the bottom. Purpose of new science curriculum is to provide students with high quality relevant learning resources. We want to take advantage of new technologies that are out there, including simulations for labs. As an example, dangerous chemicals we don't really want our kids playing with, but there are simulations for that. We want to remain aligned to the state standards, which were updated this last spring. And then the platforms that we're currently using are 9 years old. They're no longer functional or functioning in a way that is conducive to learning. Thank you. This is our existing curriculum. I do have a typo that HMH curriculum for grade 5 and for 6-8 is a copyright 2017. So that makes our curriculum 9 years old. K-5 has been using Mystery Science, which is a web-based platform. It's a subscription that the content is annually updated every July. He pulls down one unit that's not being used as much or doesn't get good reviews from teachers, and he updates it with something new. It is phenomenon-based learning, and it's standards aligned. For 5th grade, to bridge that gap because it is a standalone class, we purchased HMH as a companion program to go with Mystery Science, because we had a time period where 5th grade was in the elementaries and then it moved up to the middle school. So we were trying to bridge that gap. So we purchased 2 curriculums. You saw that with social studies as well, where we got the studies weekly for social studies, but then we also had to purchase something more robust for a daily class. In 6-8, we have HMH Harcourt. The thing about these curriculums is that they're modules, which is each module is discipline specific, but also a smaller slice within that discipline. So you'll see what I'm presenting tonight is also module related. And then the high school has a series of different programs for all the different sciences that we offer. The first one on the list is one I think that's worth mentioning. ThinkLink was used for physical science. That program just stopped existing my 2nd year as the curriculum director. And so the physical science teachers have been just champs in piloting all these different to try to meet the needs of our students. But it was literally the rug being kind of pulled out from under that group. So they've made some good choices here. K-5, go ahead and go to the next slide. K-5 chose Mystery Science because it's phenomenon-based learning, which is also now embedded in our new science standards. But phenomenon-based learning is an educational approach that uses real-world observable events or phenomena to drive student inquiry, shifting focus from that rote memorization or just reading to actively figuring out how and why things happen. So essentially, we show the students some sort of phenomena, and then the students get to guess why they think it is working the way that it is. It's just building that background knowledge before we get into the actual, like, why is it actually happening? Go ahead and next slide. Okay. That phenomenon-based learning is now integrated into the state science standards, where originally the science and engineering practices were a set of standalone standards. They've now taken those standards and embedded them into all science standards. So it's not a separate set of standards that we look at, but rather it's integrated into each grade level standards. And so you'll see that phenomenon-based learning in all grades, all standard areas. And then other changes were just little minor language tweaks, but otherwise it still aligns to the next generation science standards, which are the national science standards. Our review committee was quite small. It was larger. We had equal representation from Stage Barn, but Stage Barn had a lot of movement in teachers. So the group that I started with is not the group that I ended with. So I have 5th grade Tori Anson, 6th grade Jen Cummings, 7th grade Taylor Jordan, 8th grade Grace Steinley and Pat Cass, and then the high school with Kristen Wheaton, Tim McCann, and Vanessa Bridges. And I just quick shout out to those teachers. Piloting is hard. You're learning all new curriculum while you're trying to teach your students. So shout out to that group. They worked hard and they did a good job. This is, you've seen this before. This is where we are. We started this time, we started in the fall of 2024, and we're all the way down here now at the purple in the hope of adopting all the work that we've done. So we piloted in the spring, we piloted in the fall, and science piloted 3 programs instead of 2. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So starting with K4, I was hearing from my K4 group that they all just love mystery science, and what do we need new curriculum? We don't want it. We love K4. So I sent a survey out, and 50 of the 53 respondents, there are 74 general education teachers in the K4 range, K5 range, said that they would keep mystery science over adopting some new science curriculum. When I asked them why, they said because their most pressing need was ELA. And so that's why next month I'll be up here talking to you about ELA. They said we'd rather keep what we know is already working for our students and focus our energy and efforts on something that we know isn't working. So that was the foundation for that decision. But also mystery science already had phenomenon-based learning embedded into it. And it's just a really slick program. So James, if you can click on that, let's take a look. I just kind of want to show you. Oh, it might make you do things. A pop-up's going to come up. There you go. X out of it. There you go. And just scroll down. You don't need to push play, but scroll down to the video, and then I'll have you look at the next bit there. So this is just jumping into mystery science. When the teachers open the lesson, the phenomenon-based learning is a video that they can show in the classroom. It's usually a 5 to 8 minute video. And then they can start to ask kids questions like, why do you think this happened? Why do you think the plane lifted up off the ground? Like this particular one is talking about thrust. But then down below, it's a really stripped down version of what the teacher needs to do to get students ready for science lessons. And if you're a K4 teacher and you're trying to put together everything, all the content every single day, it's really, really nice to have this laid out the way that it is. Our team has done some work on making this even simpler. We have a Google Drive that has a lot of resources and materials ready to go for students that teachers don't have to come into the site. They can just, beginning of the year, click, and we already know what copies need to be made. All of that work is done. So we're keeping mystery science because we really like it in the K4 grades. And so James, you can go ahead and head back to that slide deck, and thank you for jumping ship. Any questions on the K4 science curriculum? Okay. The next curriculum, I'm going to go ahead and have you slide down. Well, before we move on, the cost. So next slide, James. K4 purchase. The cost for 6 years, it's a one-time expenditure of $38,904 for 6 years, and that covers all of our teachers' access to the platform.
And that gets us through to the next cycle.
Yes. Yeah, I know. Thumbs up. Okay. Any other questions on K4? Okay. Moving on to 6, we'll do 6-8 first. Remember, in our pilot process, we are creating, we're doing a needs assessment and creating a rubric so that we can look at what's not only best practice and based on research, but also what is it that we need in our district. And so what rose to the top in that rubric creation was labs and simulations, accessibility and navigation, pacing and alignment, and their assessment series. And I'm not going to read the rest, but that's the criteria. For each one, there was anywhere from 3 to 12 criterion that we rated the curriculums on. Next. We did 3 pilots. I mentioned that before. We piloted Twig in the spring during track season, and I put this in my board report at that time. There was 0 reading for the students, and so the teachers, if the kids were gone for track, the teachers were just making videos, trying to catch kids up. It was kind of a disaster. And so they decided, which is why we pilot, by the way, they decided, hey, we don't want to be limited. What if we don't like science textbook? Can we try this other one? And I said yes. So we piloted 2 this fall. Science textbook was the second, and then Amplify was the third. You can see the point distribution here. This is the teacher comparisons. They rated each in those 4 categories. It was a 1, 3, 5 Likert scale, and you can see that Amplify very clearly won out. Next slide. And then the students were surveyed as well. They had a little bit different criteria. We put it in student-friendly language. The labs helped me learn, and they were engaging. It's simple to find what I need. So students were surveyed as well, and you can see that once again, Amplify won out. So I'm going to bring around, go ahead and go to next slide. I brought in a sample from 7th grade. 7th grade does life science. And so I brought in just a single module. And I just want to talk about it really quick. This is the microbiome. This is the teacher material. This is just for the single module. So for each module, they'll get one of these books. When you flip through it, you're going to see that it's really stripped down to keep costs down. So it's not very colorful. It's which is why my team overlooked it to begin with. They were like, it's really boring. The online is spectacular, but it's stripped down for a reason. It's to make it a little bit cheaper. So there's the teacher version. The students would get, it's called the investigative notebook, but it's an interactive component for the students. This right here is all the students reading and all of the work that they need to be doing. If this is a consumable, we are recommending that we order the consumables because all of this would be sent to copy, which impacts general fund. So we're suggesting that we put this in capital outlay. It's also a very stripped down version for our students. But lastly, I brought in just a small piece. One thing that we loved about Amplify that we did not see anywhere else is the literacy component. And if you know, we've been talking about literacy in our district for the last 2 years. One thing that I saw in action, and it was amazing, was the integration of reading strategies in the science classroom. And so this is just a very small piece of a larger project, but it says, claim, antibiotics cure infections by killing all types of bacteria in the body, including the harmful bacteria that causes infections. So it's a claim. And then the students have to go through, and the teachers have guidance, and decide whether or not that claim is relevant or irrelevant. And so they have all these different slips of text, and they're sorting, is it relevant or not? And they're having discussions on whether or not the information that they found in their text was supporting the claim. This ties directly into a research and inquiry standard that shows up on our state assessment. So it's built into science and ELA. So I'll just pass those around. For the students, they're going to get a digital license and the consumable student interactive textbooks per module, which we've done in the past. We did that as on our last adoption. And teachers are going to get digital licenses as well. All of the reading strategies, not just that one, embedded in the platform, pre-made lab kits, with annual refills, and then structured professional development for a one-time expenditure of $487,421.27. Any questions on 5.8?
So those consumables, it's a purchase for the entire 6 years?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, and then they deliver all the boxes to my office in the summer. So many boxes.
What was the alternative? You said this is the stripped down version. What's the cost difference, and what would the difference be for the teachers?
Sure. So the comparison between Twig and Science Textbook, both of those were, so Twig was web-based and didn't have reading materials. So even the student book was directions on how to do the work, but no materials on how to understand the concept. So that one immediately went off the table because We can't do that if kids are absent. Science textbook had a consumable option. It was considerably more expensive, and the navigation piece was for teachers. Teachers said it was much more difficult. But Science textbook, I should also note, bought Mystery Science. So it is the parent company for Mystery Science. But teachers, when they were looking at it, they really felt like the reading strategies is what put this over for them. They liked that cross content.
Can I just clarify?
Sure.
When you say stripped down version, you don't mean the curriculum is stripped down, just this particular thing is as very basic as possible to cut down on printing costs and all of those things. That's what you meant by stripped down.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. If you recall, when we were in school way back when, the pages were glossy, very colorful. We had the hardbound textbook. That's what we're talking about. Stripped down in printing costs, not quality at all. I would say that this is a highly rated nationally, but also excellent for ELA. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Other questions on the 6-8?
They have like usable assessments that go with it too.
They do.
Like, are they decent?
They are, which is one of the criteria. Assessments, we wanted to make sure that it was systematic and that what we're putting in front of students, that academic language matches. The application is actually what students should be able to do, so the rigor is there. And then the assessments, they have, I think, 2 assessments per unit, so that if the students don't pass it the first time, the teachers have the opportunity to come back around and reteach. So, and one is a print version, one's digital. That's the 2.
And we've been talking about alignment across the district too. Is that are we going to plan to use as much similarly as we can across the district?
Yes. Yeah. Nope. That's been all of our discussions this year. The focus has been alignment, and it's been super, super beneficial. I've been trying to put that in my board report. It's a lot, but we're doing it.
And how well will this work for the students that miss class one day and have to catch up and that kind of thing? Is this good?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked that question. So this company started to gain ground during COVID. So all of their teaching staff filmed every single lesson because of COVID, and all of the labs. There's a huge library available. So if a kid is gone, a teacher can say, hey, you missed the lesson in class today. Here's this video lesson that another teacher filmed. I don't know why other vendors didn't do that. It's pretty awesome. Aaron, don't you wish, right? All right, any other questions on 6-8? Okay. Yeah, I'm thrilled about it. I think our science teachers, that's just a small slice, Scotty. There's that's a one dayer. Yeah. Okay. Next slide. And next slide again. Okay, this takes us into the high school recommendation. Boy, there's lots of moving parts with the high school. We just have a lot of science classes. We've got physical science. This is our current, I'm just jumping right into the recommendation because there are so many different science classes. Physical science, earth and space, we are recommending McGraw-Hill Inspire. This is the one, so remember, this is the class that their textbook suddenly just disappeared. They used it all last year, really liked it, and are using it again this year. Their biggest complaint last year was that they didn't have the textbook. So this year we went ahead and bought the textbooks, which is the cost you see there. And that is a one-time expenditure. AP Biology is a renewal. So we've already had that one. We're just buying the newest copyright. Anatomy Holes, same. And Psychology, same. So those are all 6-year one-time costs. Okay. What's currently under review is, and I'll come back next month and ask you to, as an action item here, but honors biology, 15,000 is estimated. That's the top end for both of these companies. Meade Hill is what we were using, and Cengage is what we're piloting. The reason why that's not ready, the teachers didn't have biology classes in the first trimester, so they've really only had since November to be looking at their pilot materials, and that's true for all of our 2 biology classes. Miller and Levine is what we use in currently, and so we're looking at their newest copyright in comparison to Inspire Biology because physical science loves it so much. They said it's such a good platform. So we're looking at both of those. Highest point price point there is $35,000. And then simulations, all science classes are looking. These are those simulations I was just talking about where we might not want to put dangerous chemicals in our students' hands, but we want them to understand chemical reaction. There is a lab simulation site called Pivot that we went through and did an alignment piece just to see if is there enough there to justify this purchase. They're currently piloting it. They say yes, that this is an exceptional tool, which is also helpful when students are absent. We're not resetting up a lab so that students can do the work. They can do the simulation instead. So that combined all together, both of those slides, the previous slide and this slide, it comes in at $123,068, and that's one-time purchase for 6 years. Multiple little purchases adding up to that number. Any questions on science?
So there's no chemistry cost because that's teacher
Teacher created.
produced. Okay, and
Yep.
she's going to be teaching. Anyway, that's irrelevant.
No, that is relevant. It's teacher created.
No, she's created it. She's probably going to be creating another class for next year, but that'll be a college level, so it'll be a different thing. Physics, didn't see physics on there. Is that under math or is
So
that?
we have physics down for next year because we have some classes at the high school that are offered every other year, and it didn't make sense. She couldn't pilot anything because it's not offered, and so it's going to fall outside of. It'll hit new curriculum when we have the opportunity to pilot.
Or so the lab stuff. So all hand chemistry specifically, all hands on stuff would go away, or some of the hands on stuff.
Some of the hands-on, some of the more expensive, like maybe we need to purchase new chemicals, but they've expired and they're not going to get here in time. Then we'll use the simulation. So that would be one example. But I definitely think we want to keep some hands-on as well.
Thank you.
Yep. It gives us more opportunities for lab.
So has anyone looked into online educational resources? So
Yes.
that's trending quite a bit right now.
Yep.
And really over the last 5 to 8 years. And now you can actually select by grade level that you're looking at. You can select state standards, which South Dakota is not on the list, but there's other standards there.
Right.
So is that a future trend that's something that we may look at doing is?
We have looked. Yep. So when we start our pilot, I gather all of the information I can find from ed reports. For our ELA, it was the Reading League. I also go to online education research resources, online open ed resources. I forgot what OER was, but that's a site that's open. So when he says OER, these are resources that are teacher created that they have then shared that are free. And so we have looked at those. What they didn't like about those is that they wanted that physical textbook. And some of the things that we talked about was like rural sometimes doesn't have internet. Physical textbook is really helpful. High school had already done 2 years without textbooks in their physical science class, and they're like, we don't want to do that. And then if we did OER, there'd be a lot of printing costs because you're printing some materials.
So some of the OER stuff that I use, you can actually order a textbook right from like Skills Common. So they have textbooks that you can order right from them. So you can still teach with the textbook, or you can use the online resources.
You should send me that link. Yep. Because what I have is just an OER link, and it's just web-based only. So yeah.
And it depends on which curriculum you choose. Like
Right.
there's like the one said there's 1,077 options in that. So you'd go through there and pick and choose, but sometimes there's a full series in there. The other question is, all of the stuff that you presented, does it align with the accessibility standards that are coming out in 27? So the WCAG 2.1.
Okay, you're going to have to tell us what that acronym stands for. No, I have no idea. So if it's accessibility, I mean, I'm sure.
It's ADA accessibility.
I was going to say it's
for
ADA.
vision text and then reading to that. Yep.
Yeah. And so, yes, 100%. I mean, they have to.
The issue with some of the, they created curriculum online, which I've seen used before. Some of that is not being transitioned over for that, and it's going to be a problem in 27 for some of those free resource sites because it's free.
Right.
No one's paying to get those accessible for ADA, for reading, and for voice.
Yeah. So with Amplify, the benefit of having it be the printing be what it is that if things come that need to change, they can update the platform and the printed material every single year. McGraw-Hill, if we go with McGraw-Hill for biology, they've been really good from what I've seen in both social studies and ELA in updating their platform to meet those needs, but not necessarily content. So. Okay, any other questions for science adoption? Okay, these materials will be on, what we have for materials will be on display at the library for the next month or so, about 6 weeks. Next month, I'll come back and ask for a decision from you. And then I'll also be presenting K-5 ELA recommendations for adoption at that time. So thank you for your time.
I had a question.
Oh,
if I
sure.
could. You mentioned briefly that some of the rural schools have trouble with internet to where they can't be using some of it. Does that happen very often? Or?
Not as much anymore. We have our internet provider out in the rural schools is Golden West, and we use Mid-Continent here in town. And so sometimes there's just a little bit of a delay in making sure all the right people know what's going on. We've done a lot of recabling out there, and so the infrastructure is better. We haven't had as many in the closer schools. I think Opal is the one that has the most issues, but for the most part, that's pretty solid coverage out there now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Item 9, action items. 9A is amend the school board policy BB, school board legal status. The school board approved the resolution to move from 3-year terms limits to 4-year term limits for board members. The policy committee recommends that the board amend policy BB, school board legal status, to revise the term of the office for board members from 3-year terms to 4-year terms. Do I have a motion?
Sorry, so moved.
Megan with the motion. Tom with the second. Any discussion?
Have you heard any more on? I've been hearing people that don't think we'll ever get anybody to run for 4 years, but I have also heard that we will too. So
I
I was
have
just
not,
curious if you had heard anything on it.
nothing concrete other than just conversation
Okay.
that people say they would or wouldn't.
You can always run for 4 years and drop out at 3. It's the same.
I'm not going to put a board through that.
All those in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 9B, combined election agreement between Meade County and Meade School District. Business Manager Brett Burdett is requesting authorization from the board to hold a combined county and school district election with Meade County Auditor in June of 2026. The district and the county will need to enter into an agreement for the purpose of renting the services for the electronic ballot machines for the school board election. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Terry with the motion.
Second.
Scotty with the second. Any discussion?
So what does this save us?
Saves us having all the election workers for that. So we run in conjunction with them. We run all their precinct sites for that election then. Brett?
Right. It's gonna share resources, Tom. Anymore, we rent their electronic scanning equipment anyway for ballots. So if we were trying to run our own election and concurrent with their election, that wouldn't be available. The polling places would be duplicated. Workers would be harder, all those things that would go in there. And so by combining with county auditors, we're sharing resources and sharing resource workers as well. It isn't going to save us any money.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 9C, combined election agreement between Lawrence County. Lawrence County has provided a combined election agreement to conduct elections in even numbered years in conjunction with the regular June primary election. Elections are being combined to save tax dollars on the cost of the individually conducted elections and to encourage a better voter turnout for all entities. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Brian with the motion.
Second.
Tim with the second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 9D, approve the Dakota bus proposal. The Business Office and Transportation Committee recommend that the board accept the proposal from Dakota Bus and direct the superintendent and business manager to finalize the contract for subsequent board approval. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Terry with the motion.
Second.
Aaron with the second. Any discussion?
So in closing, there is the proposal information that was provided to the Transportation Committee. We did receive after that was released and the recommendation came out, a third proposal, which I forwarded out to you also from Dakota Bus on that more closely aligned with those costs. From Harlow's. From Harlow's. Dakota Bus has not changed their numbers at all. That was their first quote with this. So the area that we are looking at to discuss with this is actually a direct fuel pass-through. That's probably our strongest savings. That would be the fuel paid by MSD 46-1, $4 a mile rate from Dakota Bus, and that'd be 1.378 million approximately for busing services for routes.
So we would look at bidding for fuel, securing that fuel, and then they would use that fuel for their route rather than them paying.
Possibly. We have to do some research.
Right.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at either a direct pass-through where they buy the fuel and just we get the direct bill cost for that, or actually the possibility, as we research it more, about doing the bid and saying single source providers such as like any gas station that has that, and they do all their filling there. Then we can look. I believe it's a federal or state taxes. We can actually get another discount on that if we're as the nonprofit entity purchasing that fuel. But currently, right now, we pay $4.20 at the rate included in our mileage rate, and we looked at $3.90, and fuel has been less than that, and we're going to have the cost going up no matter what. So we figure we can control our savings cost by just paying for the busing and use our fuel ourselves.
Do we have any, I guess, do we have any, not sure how to explain that one. These guys do a lot of different things. Is the new bus company something that we know works?
They have a strong reputation from Spearfish and then also the extracurricular transportation. Dakota Bus is a quality business, yes.
We've also used Dakota Bus for activities and things. So
Yes, quite a bit.
mhm.
And are we guaranteed any savings? Is it going to be locked in for a number of years, or could
So when you
this-
look at the annual increase rates, this is something when you look at the third proposal that came through is very, very close on that. Harlow's is looking at a guaranteed 5 or 3% increase. And for 27-28, they'll be tied to state increase rate, Dakota Buses. And then once we negotiate out the other years, we'll figure out those rates in advance, either state rate or what they'll be. But that's why we have to enter in the final contract negotiations for those extended years. So if you go down to the bottom of, if you go into FY 27-28 RFP, second one. Open that up, please. So if you look down the bottom, second to the bottom line, annual increase, 5 or 3% fuel pass through to Meade School District 46-1. That means every year we have 5% if we have the fuel go through Harlow's, or 3% if it does not. Whereas Dakota Bus said year one they'll do a state aid increase, and now we have to work on that as a baseline of 3% or less as we move forward. So we'll work on that with Dakota Bus moving forward past that year. So true savings, busing is going to cost more than it did before. Okay, we know that. Our savings that we have, which now Harlow's has matched the third proposal, is 75% cost paid for any days that are not run. Before it was 100% cost with that. So it's our feeling, especially with Dakota Bus's original RFP, we are going to save money versus the Harlow's contract. Now, the third proposal, after we already had the meeting with Transportation Committee, makes that closer. But we got to 3 proposals before we had the match the single proposal from Dakota Bus. So I am still recommending, and Transportation Committee, you've seen all the information. If you're still with your recommendation, I mean that's the end result. You guys have to decide.
Any other discussion? Okay, we'll put it to vote. If we are in favor, we will be selecting Dakota Bus. We had a little bit of discussion there. I just want to clarify. If we vote in favor, that's for the Dakota Bus contract. If we vote nay, then it's to not go with Dakota Bus. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 9E, approve retirement incentives. At October board meeting, the board approved early retirement incentives MOU, which provides early retirement incentives for eligible district certified teachers. Mr. Wormstead recommends that the board approve the specific early retirement incentive amounts for the following district certified teachers and administrators. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Terry with the motion,
Second.
Brian with the second. Any discussion?
What was our total number we were looking? Our magic, not a magic number, but kind of the goal number.
We're looking about 70,000, but that now what we'll do is we'll take this list upon approval of this. We will look and see if there's any positions we can absorb across that. That's sort of looking like at the assistant principal position at the high school. That was actually on the list for next year as a reduction. Instead of looking at hiring somebody and then having to cut them the next year, that doesn't make much sense. So we'll move that up this year and be able to absorb that position early. So that'll be a full savings. So we're working on that right now. Tomorrow, the admin team, actually, the principals, lead principals at every building are going to meet and talk about where we can transition people from our movement from Closure Atoll, 5th grade Whitewood, what positions we can actually absorb, how we fill those positions, and we will hopefully absorb even more savings if we can absorb 1 or 2 positions. Every position we absorb is going to be north of $70,000. So, and we'll have that information for you to see at the February meeting with final recommendations for cuts to hit our 1.35 million or more.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Can I just say really quick that I just want to thank those teachers and that administrator for their service to Meade School District. You know, we can't do what we do without our teachers and staff and administrators. So I appreciate everything that they have done.
9F.
All right.
That's you, Aaron.
9F. We are in, there's no details on it. All right, we're into approve attorney's letter in response to conflict of interest complaint. So,
You want me to give a little?
yeah, go ahead. Go
You
ahead.
make a motion.
Abstaining.
I was going to say there's
He's abstaining.
Mr. Justin will be, Mr.
Mr. Just.
Mr. Judding will be abstaining. Wayne is going to explain before we
So, yep. So I was at the Whitewood town hall meeting. We had a patron there, Miss Fitzgerald, who says there's a potential conflict of interest with the 5th grade being moved to Sturgis Williams. So if you look at the attached document at the end, I believe it was the next day, I emailed her asking for very specifics about what her conflict of interest could be. I then, after reading the conflict of interest, knowing this is a board matter, I turned it over to our board attorney to research law to ensure that we have that, forward out the complaint to the board, and also then the response letter. So this is your first board meeting where you can actually discuss this and go through the process with this. So that was the initial start. The conflict is that by moving 5th grade, or alleged conflict is by moving 5th grade, it created a position or revenue or income for Mr. Judding by maintaining Mrs. Judding's position as assistant principal. My initial looks at this is that there is not a conflict of interest because she had nothing to do with that. It had no beneficial gain or personal gain in that matter whatsoever. So Mr. Neese researched the law, attached the letter that you see here, where he goes to the pecuniary, indirect pecuniary interest laws with that, cites legal cases that were also brought up by Ms. Fitzgerald. And then this is that letter for your review, which you've received, to either approve or disapprove with that, if there's conflict of interest.
All right, after reviewing this information, do we have a motion for 9F?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Leaded.
So Brian with the motion to approve the letter, Lee with the second. Any discussion on this item?
So now that we're into the letter with the motion, if you look specifically at the letter, if you look at the LTR Fitzgerald attachment, okay, you may need to.
It's gonna be up at 3A.
No, it's you're gonna have to refresh. You have to go out and come back in possibly. Sorry.
Oh, he doesn't have 3A.
No, go down 9F. It's there. 9F. Open up 9F.
Refresh it. I had to refresh.
You
mine,
might have
it
to go
popped
out
up.
and back in. If you go to home and then rejoin the meeting. Because mine's not there either.
There it is. Thank you.
Hey Tanya, would you on the action on that? It says you already carried the motion before a vote has taken place by accident. Okay, so with this letter here, you're going to see Mr. Neese has gone through that and stated that basically having an indirect or direct is not possible. We had basically essentially saying any board member who has a spouse within the district, you could make a tailed argument that it's their financial benefit through the entire process with this. And therefore you could not have a board member with a spouse within our school district. We have active noticed conflict of interest. Same for Mr. Judding on his wife working for the district. We also have another board member whose wife works for the district has filed a conflict of interest with that. During negotiations or placement of any of those staff, they have to abstain from conversation and or voting in those areas with that. Mr. Neese confirms that there is no conflict of interest in this, and we'll be sending this letter tomorrow to Ms. Fitzgerald, if approved.
And just to be clear, our vote tonight is just to approve the sending of this letter.
Yep. Well, by agreeing to this letter, you're saying there's no conflict of interest. That's correct. So with that, so to keep it out of my hands, because this is a board matter, I just did the research, gave it to the attorney, brought that back to you for your
Thank you.
for your decision.
Any other questions or discussion before we vote? No? All right. All in favor, say aye.
I
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Item 10, discussion items. 10A, South Dakota Legislative Audit Report, Part 2. This item represents Part 2 of the acceptance letters related to the 24-25 Meade School District 46-1 audit. Part 1 was presented to the board at the previous meeting. Inclusion of Part 2 in the January board packet is necessary to complete the audit acceptance process.
If you remember back, Casey Peterson kind of enlightened the group that when the federal government shut down, none of the federal component of these audits were being done. And so that pushed them back several months. Ours did get through that final federal review. It was approved. And so the second letter just signifies that that has been done. The audit has been officially accepted in its complete form. So we just needed to show that to the board as a complimentary letter to letter 1.
Item 10B, school board election. Petitions for school board vacancies for the 26-27 school year can start being circulated on February 2nd, 2026, and no later than March 24th, 2026 for the June 2nd, 2026 election. The election timeline, nominating petitions, and other forms are located on the district's website.
And again, we want to notice the notice of vacancies had been published already in December. It ran in the legal paper for two consecutive weeks. Again, FY26, the vacancies are 1 2-year term and 2 4-year terms. All right. And that election, and based on approving the combined election with both Meade and Lawrence, will be held combined with those 2 county entities. And so we would be publishing those polling places independently, but they will be run by both Lawrence County and Meade County in their respective counties. So we will be publishing that not only in the legal paper, but on our website when that timeline comes. Okay, there's some minor changes, so we want to make sure we're out ahead of this every month to let people know that there's some minor changes going on with the elections, and it started with the being able to take out petitions. Okay.
If someone is interested in running, but they have questions, who is the best person for them to call and ask questions of?
Well, in terms of taking out a petition, we're more than willing to help them. If they're asking what it's like to be a board member, I would recommend them visiting to one of the 9 sitting at this table right now. Okay.
I meant the how to do the petition.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, you can come to our office. We'll walk you through the process of what it needs to, when you can take it out, the amount of signatures you need, what the signatures need to be, when to turn it back in, all that. So we're happy to do that at the business office, Megan, anytime.
Just remember that if you know of somebody that wants to do it, they have to get the actual petition from here. You can't just print one off. Because we had, what was that, 3 years ago, there was
Right, the official are front and back. Sometimes if you print them off and you only print the front, it's not a valid petition. You can take them out at the Meade County Auditor's office, or you can bring them out. We have packets set up already for everybody.
Has to be notarized, correct?
Right, when you
Before
take
you
it out,
do
it
it?
has to be notarized. So if you take it out early, and again, if you take it out before those dates, you cannot get it notarized before those dates, and you cannot circulate it before those dates. We've had people take it out early, get it notarized, and when they brought it back in, the notary date was earlier than the first date you could circulate it, so we had to basically void that petition. So again, ask those questions, or we will come in and try to answer the best we can.
C, fiscal year 27 capital outlay budget update. Business manager Brett Burdett will provide a brief update on the fiscal year 27 capital outlay budget.
Again, so we started talking about this in December. We're going to bring it back now. I think we've emailed to the board that complete detailed capital outlay budget. And I said back in December, if we had any changes or requests to that budget, we would bring it up. The only thing that we've had multiple requests over the last probably month about replacing vehicles. Okay, a large percentage of our fleet has got a lot of miles on it. And some of those vehicles, we're using them for purposes they weren't initially intended for. So I've added a $70,000 placeholder for a replacement vehicle. That could either be one multi-passenger vehicle like we use in activities, or it could be 2 smaller ones that we would distribute throughout the district. Again, put it in the budget still means that you'll eventually approve if that vehicle is purchased or not. But we needed to put it in there because we had some departments asking to have some vehicles replaced of those that are like 140,000 miles on them. We're starting to see some high maintenance costs on those vehicles. And so if you remember, the 5-year plan shows placeholders every year for vehicles. We just didn't know if we were going to have to do anything next year or not. But based on the amount of input we're getting, we should probably at least be prepared to consider it. So that's the only change to it at this point, the capital outlay budget. We will go, I've sent out to the Buildings and Grounds Committee the project list that's being proposed for next year, and it had a narrative beside each project. We will review that and vet that again at the end of the month. And there's probably 3 projects we're going to ask the board to either authorize this to advertise for bids or enter into service agreements so we can start to get on contractors list, start to see if there's any long-term lead items for delivery that are engaged in those projects. And we'll do that at the February board meeting. But again, the Buildings and Grounds Committee was provided a list of those projects. We'll go over those at the I believe it's the last Monday in January at that Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting. And then you basically will get your authorization to bring those projects ahead in the budget, and then specifically talk about 3 of them. Piedmont Valley Roof, which is looking like it's going to be about a $600,000 plus project to replace the roof. The electrical upgrades at the Williams building we're in now, in the Sturgis Williams Middle School. We're still working, trying to get the specifications built for those bids. Mr. Wildryer is working on that. And the 3rd project will be moving forward with the playground improvement project at Sturgis Elementary. We want to get on their list so we can try to lock in prices. We met last week at Sturgis Elementary. We've narrowed down the location. The option which we want to pursue, and we'll vet this out with the committee, is the playground upgrade with turf surfacing. We feel that will have the best long-term rate. Last month, we put in the budget for that project, up to $330,000. We've met with Skull Construction. They're willing to do the excavation for no charge for next year, so we're able to get that done. We wanted to make sure the location we had was acceptable for drainage. And then we'll discuss that at the end of the month with the committee to make sure that the committee is supportive of that option. All right. We had talked about fundraising for that project. There's limited funds available in terms of going outside and doing that. So if we approve that project, we will probably ask the board to commit the full amount of money that's in the budget to complete that project at this point. All right. Those are questions we're going to have at the end of the month to make sure that we vet those out and are all comfortable with how we move that project forward. Capital outlay revenue hasn't changed much, other than the fact every month we will continue to remind the finance committee and the board as a whole that next year's capital outlay budget is based on an increase in levy of $250,000. It's going from $7.5 million to $7,750,000 to fund that budget. We'll talk about that every month to make sure that if there's our questions or our concerns, we try to address those before we get into May, June, and July, and that's where we publish board hearing, we have budget hearings, then we actually approve those budgets. So again, if you're thinking about that and you have questions or concerns, prefer to have them out before those decision-making times come out. So that's capital outlay. General fund, we're starting to roll that process. Legislative session will begin soon. You've all heard the governor's address, zero increase in funding to education. So we're starting to build out what a revenue budget might look like. Obviously, we've talked about potential savings or cuts in the general fund budget in terms of expenditures. But first, we kind of start where we think the revenue might be. I've prepared a document, and it's got multiple enrollment scenarios. One being no enrollment decrease, one being enrollment down 10. But it looks like based on what our class sizes are coming in, we'll probably be looking at an enrollment going down from 2948 to 2918, which is about 30 less kids, or about $220,000 less revenue if nothing changes. And so we know we're going to potentially lose some federal funding as well. So we're building out that revenue scenario. We'll discuss that with the finance committee in detail in January, and we'll bring that revenue budget back to look like. Once we kind of have that projection, that gives us a target for an expenditure budget, right? We want to try to build our expenditure budget to align with whatever revenue we think we're going to get. So we've been talking about $1 million, $1.2 million in cuts. You know, those are the targets, and what does that number actually look like when we put it together in that 38-page document and try to pull that together. So the revenue is a little easier once we start to know those parameters. The expenditure one's going to be a little more complicated based on future decisions you as a board will continue to be asked to make, okay? That's kind of where we're at right now. Capital outlay, we should be bringing it back next month and almost put a bow on it. General fund, we're just getting going. All right? Questions for me?
You mentioned that Skull Construction was going to donate their time in doing that. Is that part of the $330,000?
Now, we met with Andy Skull, who's the president of Skull Construction right now, and with a long-term relationship with Skull over the past of projects, he anticipated it might take him probably longer just to get driven up here than it would take to excavate a 60 by 100 foot area to house that equipment, Tim. So
that 330 is over and above what that would be.
Right. So I think the equipment, when it was quoted to us with the turf and the equipment, was about $316,000. We put some extra in there in case we ran into something that we might have to do in terms of excavation. One of the things we're looking at is we want to make sure we have a clean transition from asphalt to this playground for ADA capability. So where we put this, there may be a little bit of concrete work or something to make for a smooth transition to that space. So we allowed a little bit of overage in there for that. Again, as soon as we can lock into pricing with that company, then we can start to narrow that down. But in the budget, we would be able to not go any higher than that 330. And you're right, it does not, that number does not include excavation. You're welcome.
10D, modified 4-day week, 26-27 school calendar survey results and discussion. There was a discussion will be had on whether to implement a modified calendar and the possible time frame to implement.
So we surveyed this calendar here with our staff. That's all hourly staff and contract staff going through. So if you scroll up there, you're going to see that overall it's a positive reception for the possible modified 4-day. The modified 4-day would be 5-day week before Christmas and 4-day week after Christmas with that. The other thing that we have not looked at is a true 4-day calendar week. So that's one of those questions we're going to have here is this the calendar you want to work with moving forward? One of the big glaring pieces we have of this, and I'll talk about survey results here and comments in a little bit, is we have not yet surveyed parents and the impacts on whether they support this as a whole. So there's a lot of work to do with this. So looking at those survey results real quick, you're going to see that majority of people support this, but also with that support, there are some limitations because they said they may support if they had some questions answered with that. And when I did ask the question about the number that currently attend after-school programs at a school site, majority of our staff do not have their children attend after-school programs, but that's primarily because when you look at this, we end up with parents taking their kids home after school. That's part of the thing is their lifestyle with school schedule. It works really well if you're a parent with that. When you look at the proposal for this, I support the calendar. It's at 48% with another 19% that say they would support it with some questions answered. So when you look overall, you're just shy of 70%. So about 2/3, a little over 2/3 of the people are saying that this is something they'd consider. When we looked at the survey questions that came out, I did some analysis on that. Here's the biggest 5 positives that came from our staff. And number one is teacher and staff morale retention. That actually aligns with the research that's been conducted, and I sent those research areas out for everybody to look at if they'd like to. It does have improved morale, and you'd have a better chance of retaining your staff. The built-in PD and work time on Fridays, if that was in there, that means we need fewer subs. So that's just savings there. So realistically, your cost savings, we're going to assume after seeing the bus savings on this for a modified 4-day week, is maybe we're going to save about $50,000, maybe a little bit more. Okay, so it's not going to be a huge savings. So we're probably talking if we could get to 0.5 to 0.7%, that's about where we're going to end up for that. And that all depends on what happens on those Fridays. What services that when school is closed we provide for that, and that'll come up in a second. Consistent Fridays off and scheduling predictability. Staff like that as a whole. Budget and operational efficiencies, I just mentioned that 50,000 plus we could save, but I would not expect a full 125,000. I think we probably skating around the 75,000 where we really broke it all down. If you look at the bus proposals and that, why the 4-day week didn't save much money, their thing is just like us, they got to keep people staffed. Okay. Their people can't go backwards far enough that they don't want to work and drive bus for that. Student benefits, attendance, behavior, and mental health. That's actually shown in some research as positives for a 4-day school week also for that, and our staff did cite that. What is not good? Childcare burden for families. That's a big one. We haven't asked the question of families, and will this be a burden for those families that commute out of the Somerset area or Whitewood area or wherever, and they don't have daycare for that 5th day for their kids? Okay, we need an answer to that question. Income and hours for hourly staff. Our hourly staff have a lot of questions within the survey responses there, and looking at, I already work here and I have a second job in the summer or in evenings to make ends meet. How can I lose 20% of my wages? Well, some wouldn't, because those hours would increase at the end of your day for 20, 25 minutes. So they'd see more time there. It'd be less than that. But an area that would really be impacted is actually food service. Food service, you're not going to extend your day longer from breakfast to lunch. That'd still be the same 4 days a week. So all those weeks in the spring, they would actually lose, 20% of their income. Okay, that's kind of a tough part when we talk about retention for teachers and certified staff. They're not going to take 20% less or 5% or 10% less. But our hourly employees, we got to figure out how we'd offset that if we could. That's why you don't see that whole savings people talk about, is because you're still going to have to adjust your market wages in order to keep people available to work with that. So calendar complexity and mid-year hybrid change. Basically, I'm going to say some people think that's confusing. They'd rather you have all 5 days or just a 4-day calendar. Okay, not the hybrid at that. And looking at that for students, would that have an impact? Number 4 is impact on student learning and vulnerable learners or special education. Title students, would that decrease in contact time have the greatest impact on that? Some of the research shows that it can if it's not done well, but it also depends on what you're doing on that off Friday. Are you providing extra services on Friday, which means then you have an increased cost again? Okay, or I should say lack of savings for those days for that. Loss of hours versus added minutes. That's came from the teachers for contract clarity. You know, they lose so many hours within that. When you look at the 179-day contract that we have, how do we roll that over? That's a lot of MOU work, memorandum of understanding, while you're in this calendar to ensure that all your hourly employees understand what's taking place, and also your contracted staff. Because what's going to happen is you just don't get to keep 179 hours asking for longer. You got to find that balance in there, like we did at the rural staff for 150 and 169 with that. A lot of questions on that. You know, if you really look at the suggestions with this, I have a tough time recommending that you move to this by the April deadline to have a calendar, because that gives us right now less than 90 days to solve all those questions and answers and get that research done that you want to do. If the board is truly interested in looking at either a full 4-day week or a modified 4-day week, my suggestion is that we do this really well, because if we don't do it well and don't have these questions answered, what we save, we could lose by just 10 or 12 students going and saying, I need Friday school because I don't have daycare. And we have 300 students that come out of the Rapid City all the way up because of transportation just in that area. How many of those elementary kids do not attend because of that? If there's anybody driving out of Sturgis and they need school for that because they're working down in Rapid City or Spearfish or wherever they're working at, what happens on that 5th day? South Dakota has the highest rate of 2-income family households. It means both parents are working. School is one of the key foundations for people to schedule around for their work balance to support their families. So those are big questions we have to answer. Otherwise, we could compound the issue, probably still do wealth retention. We could probably shift some wages, things like that, to make people whole in the meantime. But my fear is if we don't do this well and truly ask the questions, take our time figuring out if we want to do this, we could have a negative reaction to our student enrollment, which would just precipitate the compounding of this. I know it's a great idea. Everybody thinks about it and they think it's going to be 5%, 3%. When you look at our size district and what we do, it's actually not going to save as much as we think. 0.5% is $125,000. I just told you it'd be tough to get to 0.5% of our current budget on that. So do I think it has merit to study and see it's possible? I'm actually sort of an advocate, did a lot of research in graduate school on 4-day week. I just worry that from our talks this fall that we jump into something so fast that we don't do it well.
And it's not the curriculum well, it's serving students well.
Serving students well, and then 2, taking care of your staff, and then meeting the needs. Number 3 is of your community. We got to ask the community what they want. How do we take care of our staff? And we're going to meet the needs of the students with that. The retention thing, all the research shows your staff like the 4-day school week. That's going to be positively received overall. The majority of the staff are going to like that. As a whole, it'll be a good recruiting tool, but it can't be at the loss of other areas. And we have area schools here we can easily research, have been doing it for a decade plus, and look into that and solve those answers. But we also have a a workforce that commutes a lot to different sites. We don't have an employer of 800 or 2 employers of 800 in the Sturgis and Somerset area that people are just really close by. They're driving 30, 40 miles in that range for their employment.
Say, Wayne, on that, what is it you think that would help us prevent things, or what would make it better? Is there something that we can do as a school board Is there a way to choose the principals and the teachers to get on board, make some kind of committee that would help that run smoother? Or do you
Well-
have any opinion on what that?
Well, yeah, there's things, you're going to have to answer some questions. First, we're going to have to survey our parents what their needs are. The district is going to research this over X amount of time with a decision by probably December, January of next year, if you chose to do that. You got to get those questions. And then you have a group of people that really work really hard on saying, how do we answer this? Does it actually save money? Does it actually serve students? Does it actually build a schedule that people want to work within? Usually you're going to have teachers research it, admin, and parents, a couple board members on that to really go through that process. It's not a little bit of work, it's a lot of work. That's fine. The calendar is the easy part. I can build you 6 different calendars by next board meeting just to look at. The problem is the impact and what takes place with that calendar for that. I mean, as a past high school teacher, I'd have loved a 4-day school week, coaching 3 sports and every Friday gone. That would have worked really well for me being in the classroom more and doing those things. I get that. It'd be good for our high school students who travel a lot on Fridays from speech, debate, and everything else. There's just more than that conversation of saving money and that piece there that we need to, if we're going to think about this seriously, we need to research, bring people on board, come through that process. And I can build out a roadmap to how to put that together. If the board wants to research and do that. If the board doesn't want to, I don't want to chase this and give people false hope either. I mean, just by having this conversation, I have MEA teacher leadership asking, they assume when we surveyed this that we're going to seriously, if the teacher said yes and staff said yes, we're going to do this. Well, that was just to see if there's enough interest. And now we have, and find out what questions people had, what they liked, what they didn't like. I mean, just from those survey results and questions you saw, there's a lot of stuff that we have to answer.
I appreciate the survey, and I agree with taking more time on it just after reading all of the responses, because there were a lot of things that I hadn't thought of that a lot of the staff brought up. Going both ways. Yeah.
I do think a roadmap to do this clearly. If we're going to wait on this as a board and punt this a year and make a decision, I think a roadmap would be useful. And okay, when does this have to happen? When does this have to happen to make sure we do this right? Because we've talked, you've talked, and we've talked that if we're going to do this right, it's going to take some stuff. Now, what does that actually look like?
And I can bring you a outlined roadmap at the February meeting and then say if you guys really want to pursue this for the 27-28 school year. Can we put a calendar together, get everything set and everything ready for next fall? Yeah, will we do it really well and answer questions from parents and be prepared to serve families? I think that will be a struggle for us, honestly. I think we'll have a lot of happy staff, but we'll have a lot more headaches.
When you were, one of the reasons we're doing this, primarily even looking at the 4-day school work, is because we're under a major budget crush. When you're speaking of the amount of money that we would potentially save, are you looking at future once we've gone into a 4-day school week, or are you saying that first time we get it, we could be saving
a teacher position? Let's just call it this. I can guarantee you'll save a teaching position, maybe 2, essentially, salaries and benefits. If we can answer everything and do well, and our Fridays are not pushed too far back into other areas. I just showed you that on our busing contracts, you didn't see a lot of difference in costs savings, because that is 75% of their capital costs for equipment and employees. Okay? Then you got profit margin, then you get fuel. Okay? There is not a lot of room for them to be able to retain those employees. They're not going to save a lot of money. They're going to say still, if we said they're going to make an average of $500 a week, okay, let's estimate that just for the fun of it. Now they're only working 4 days a week. There's a certain percentage of them need that $500 a week, and they just lost 100 of it. Same thing in food service. So we have to have a thoughtful plan, not just employees and parents and students. There's a lot of moving pieces with this that are exposed to that survey and the questions that people were asking.
So I think to answer your question, Tom, you don't go into a 4-day week as a budget saving metric for the district. You go into a 4-day week because it serves your community better. It serves your faculty and staff better. Because the cost savings that come along with it is so minute that it's irrelevant. You do it because it's what's right for the people that you serve. Is it a benefit to us if we do save some money and go into it? With the current situation that we're in, yes. But we can't make that decision to go into it with the whole driving factor is saving 1% of our general fund budget or 0.5% of our general fund budget. It needs to be because we're serving the students, we're serving the community, the faculty and staff. Where our retention of both students and staff is better, because we can lose that savings so quickly that it's irrelevant. So when we do this, I think we have to do it for the right reasons.
I mean, it also came up on the strategic plan that we did last year too, which was before we saw our enrollment number for this fall. So, and I mean, even prior to that, there have been many iterations or versions of and grumblings of what does a 4-day school look like for Meade. So it's been up and about for years. The pros and cons have been kind of chatted about for years. It's not just sudden. It feels more immediate though, as we know for sure. But I think being more thoughtful and exploring it, if our community can do it, I mean, as a board, we would have to be supportive of it. But if we look at all the data and all the feedback and our communities can't do it, or there's going to be too many barriers, it's going to be hard for us as a board to say we're going to do it anyways and just see what happens. Just simply based on open enrollment, especially in the Valley, looking at those numbers, it has to be really thoughtful.
I will say you'll have, if you take the time to do this and make a decision next year and we do the research and bring people together to look at it and have time to look at cost analysis, we'll have a more accurate number. I'm just talking about busing and staff development. That's at 50 to 60,000. Then I think there's other areas you could get, but it's very tough to say that without doing the work behind this. We have staff support if we can answer questions, if we can take care of our people. I think we'll have that. I mean, we need to build a good survey for our parents to look at and say, does this make sense? Then you have to follow up with a follow-up survey. You know, you just talked about processes after you say, what questions do you have as we explore this? It's not, do you want to do it? What questions do you have if we explore this? What are your needs for your family? Then you take a look at how you take care of that, how you build a calendar, and then you put the calendar out. Does this calendar or A, B, or C work for your family if we provide X, Y, and Z? What needs to be provided for that? That's how you take care of that. And you're doing the same thing with that process with all your staff, saying, what do you need to do that? And then you're trying to find the solutions for that. Then you bring back a final proposal for you guys to look at and community see what they supported and staff supported as a whole. I mean, seniors, you'd like to go to school 1 day less a week, right? I got them sold already. There's 2 of them. No. But those are things we have to do well or we're just going to fall apart.
A question. Seniors would like it, but then they have to go to school longer, don't they?
Those days, yeah.
More days in the into May or whenever.
No.
No, it's already end of May. I don't think
It didn't really go longer into the.
No, it doesn't go longer. So what happens is we actually add minutes to every day. The day is longer
by
throughout
like
the year.
25 minutes.
Yeah,
Or
on this,
25
about
minutes.
25 minutes. The question is then, can you make that valuable time of instruction to impact learning by losing that time in that shift? I mean, there's a ton of things that layer into this. If you look at all those things that took place there, those research sites I sent you, Oregon's got a great site for this that has compiled a lot of the research for it. You start looking at this, what is the things you have, why are you going to go into it? Can you answer the questions for the people? Can you serve your community?
And it is much easier to do it at the high school level than it is K4.
Yep.
K4 is where we run into really providing that education setting, but it's daycare for parents that have to work 5 days a week. And you don't want a chance of losing them to another district.
I have like 2 or 3 things. So first, I just wanted to piggyback and I was going to talk about the strategic plan and that being part of it. I have been a proponent of a 4-day school week for before I was on the school board. I'm pretty sure one of the first conversations I had with Wayne was we should move to a 4-day school week. But after talking with some of the staff, particularly those hourly staff who reached out to me with concerns, and having experienced it when we lived in Custer, when my children were young, you know, you get further and further away from that, and you forget about those things a little bit. But the cost of childcare is tremendous. I do think pushing it off and being a little more planful, and having that roadmap and having those discussions about how we can do this and do this well, including supporting our staff and our community families. That I think waiting and seeing for a 27, 28, I would be in support of that, of waiting. Did all that make sense?
And I would also say that I think it's going to be important that when we do talk about a game plan, that we try to do a really good job of including staff members, principals and teachers and stuff like that. So when we set up the plan, everybody gets a say and works together. So when it does come together, it works. So that should be initiated sooner than later.
So I'll bring back in February just an outline map of what that looks like. We'll need to participate, different pieces to pull that together, including probably a couple site visits, things like that we have to have. Now, we wouldn't be the largest district that tries to do this, but we'd be the largest in South Dakota that has tried to do this. So as we look at that process. And the question is, does the plan make sense next year? If it does, the board makes a decision. If it doesn't, the board makes a decision. That's fine. We can do the work. Knock one of those things off the strategic plan.
10E, daycare development discussion. Wayne, this is kind of your idea. You want to take it or you want me to read the background?
No.
I can read your ideas.
No. We'll go through this. So this takes time to do this, but you have to start the conversations with a public entity usually in order to say, how are we going to support economic development? Some of those areas that take place here. We know that when we look at our workforce, our teachers and our staff, retention and recruitment, one of the things that a lot of our people have is there accessible daycare? Is it affordable daycare with that? So previous district, we actually designed a facility and sat there, and 5 years later, they're finally moving forward with a city, county, school, hospital, large employer, and a couple other ones. They're saying, we're going to make this work because it's important for our community in order for us to grow. We have to do some exploring what our community needs. Space availability, that's where we really come into. Regulatory requirements, which is pretty easy. I got some people that I can probably tap into about daycares and social services and everything else about that in the state. Big one is public-private partnerships in order to make that work. I mean, this isn't something that ends up becoming a new enterprise fund that we fund off the side, and then we're trying to get enough money, and we have another food service account that if we don't fit it, we have to transfer general fund to. We can't afford to do that with our primary source of revenue, or serving kids. We do have some things that we could possibly get the grant funding to start up, but what we really can provide is space. We can provide consistent space. So when this works well in a community is that the district or a community entity like a community foundation owns the facility, and they're renting at low cost to either a corporation or a family-based daycare to serve families. Now, in order to ensure that that stays viable, that's where the partnerships come in to make that happen. All right? Because what takes place is eventually, if it's a smaller-based daycare center person that's running gone to a much larger thing, they may get burnt out. Corporations come and go. What you don't want to have is for your community to invest into a daycare center that is not publicly controlled by the city, the county, or the school, so that asset always remains there for the next daycare provider with that. So as you build this out, you have to have that as your back of your mind is, We can't just help you build a daycare, buy a facility, and then 7 years later say I'm out of the business, and you sell your building to someone else. All that work and prep for 2, 3, 4 years has just gone away because you've lost your facility. That's where we come in as a school and some of the spaces we have. And we have 2 areas that I see can really jumpstart this. Whitewood Elementary has space for daycare and attracts families. That'd be a good feeder system into that. Second thing is we look at the CT addition at Sturgis Brown High School. If we just look for space for curriculum and their materials, not the people really, we don't need much space for a department of 1.5, but all the materials and things that we have there, and then technology. If we relocate that, Francis Case Elementary School has a footprint that with some remodeling, as a previous lower elementary school, could really be used in Sturgis as a great daycare center. Okay? And if, let's say, a daycare doesn't take off and we still do this for some reason, that's a great early learning center that you can expand preschool opportunities. Okay? Our issue is down in the valley. We really don't have a space to do that right now. But as we hopefully gain momentum through the other 2 communities, if we choose to do this and explore this, and a lot of it's exploratory, and this doesn't come off tomorrow unless you get some very strong partners, it's going to be a 2-year process for maybe one facility and about a 4 or 5 year process for the other one, because as we have to do a CT center remodel, things like that, that's why we talk about this now. It took 5 years after the remodel, partially because of COVID, but that was our entire plan with the remodel facility. That remodel discussion started for 3 years, got it done. COVID hit, put it back, and they're probably going to start that next year. We're in a position where we can bring asset and value to our employees, but other public employees, private employees, and recruit people to our community of that age group. So that's sort of a big picture with that. But if the board's opposed to looking into using our facilities for this, then I know that, or start the exploration, talking to economic development, chambers, county, cities about the possibility of this.
Are there other school districts that have done this?
Oh yeah, Yankton actually did a daycare and preschool center through a opt-out and bond referendum. They just told us this is the future of our community. They built a brand new daycare and preschool center, raise their taxes to build it, and turn around and raise their taxes to fund it, help fund it, and then they have their fee-based system for preschool and things like that. It is probably one of the shining examples across the state that it is Yankton's. I mean, that is, and the taxpayers got behind it because they said this is important for economic development. Now, I'm not proposing that we go out and get a bond or something like that. I'm saying there's ways to make this work. This is a bigger issue when you look at the number of maternity leaves and things like we have here and our staff, and then you look around the community and things like that, and you start looking at recruiting young teachers with families. It's a big deal. I mean, we recruited a teacher last year at the high school whose wife is a professional also. Their biggest issue is finding daycare. Okay? They had a big struggle finding the needs they have for that. You know, they didn't think it'd be that big a deal moving from a smaller community. But it was a major impact, and they ended up finding it, but it was not easy.
And you see different joint ventures other than daycare. So like Spearfish's CTE expansion, they have a joint venture with, like, I think it's the sheriff's department or the police department. So there's an outside access in that doesn't go into the building. So they can come in and actually get to offices there, but then actually enter through the secretary's office and then other offices that are in that. You see library spaces from time to time share.
City schools.
Rapid City did the medical stuff at that North Elementary building.
Yep.
It's like a low or reduced or free medical services type of thing at a North Elementary School in Rapid City. So you see schools partnering with other district members or foundations, etc., to come together and provide a community need.
I think there's an opportunity too. This idea just came to me as we were talking about it, is that potentially something to do with early childhood development CTE courses in conjunction with a daycare center kind of deal.
Yeah, we have some classes actually just in the early learning, but we'd actually have a site for even more for our students to participate in. Yep.
Exactly.
Terry, you're thinking over there quite a bit.
This one's kind of different because being part of the school board, I feel like we should be really focused on students versus daycare. But I could see a big advantage to doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's significant. I think back when I was staff in the district, and we were fortunate enough to have a pretty decent daycare setup, but when we weren't, there were times that we weren't. I mean, my wife and I were both teaching in the schools, and it was like, what the heck are we supposed to do? Or a kid gets sick. Okay, now I'm calling my mom who doesn't even live close by, trying to figure those things out. So, like, having an option that we have a partnership, I mean, there's a million reasons why it's great. It's just we talk about budget mostly, where it's not great, and staffing it and making sure that it's a good, high-quality partnership so that it can be, like Wayne said, sustainable. I mean, it's an amazing idea. It's just we've got to figure out a lot of logistics.
No, I'm not saying we wouldn't run it. My preference would be is that we have space and contract with a private entity to run it for that need. Because we're creating a private entity jobs for that. And we will see, I think, more energy to do it well when you're running your own private business with that. I think our forte is going to be preschool through high school, and we should stick in that area. Now, I know schools that do it and run it as an enterprise fund, essentially. I think that that's possible, but maybe our research says yes. But from my knowledge base and seeing it run, I think bringing in a private entity to do that, or private partnership with public support, you can have some big impacts.
And would we be responsible then when we talk budget? Are we responsible for turning those classrooms into a daycare? Are we responsible for cleaning it? Are we?
Well, that's all the research and how you come together and look at your public-private partnership. What you're going to do, is that going to be one of those things that's part of their cost? Is our assistance to that going to be utilities and the facilities in the right shape for that all the time? And taking care of roofs put on, that's just our capital contribution from a district side of view. But we don't staff it, we don't insure it, we might not clean it. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. All those look different. Now, if we do it all ourselves, yeah, it's all us. But I think there's a lot of ways to skin that.
It's kind of like the rental agreement we just went into with National Guard. So you come to an agreement of both parties agree to, this is what we're responsible for this amount. This is what you're responsible for what you're contributing for rent. And you come to a mutually beneficial agreement that the board and their board say will work for both. And you're doing it for the betterment of the community.
You might have a church that decides they want to run a daycare and want to use that space. You might have a private entity.
As long as you do what you're doing, as long as you're doing what you're doing now, you're paying to keep that building up anyway.
Yep.
All right. And it's not an instructional center.
Yep.
All right. And so you have that cost right now anyway. And so you're not going to, as long as you keep it as doing what you're doing, you're not going to get out from underneath that cost. So is a different method of trying to make that just a different use. So
That use of the facility becomes more beneficial long-term to the district and the community than technology and curriculum. So if it's okay at the board, I'd start conversations with our area chambers, city councils, county, economic development. Start the conversation, see if they're willing to start looking at moving forward with this jointly. I mean, that means Lawrence County will be talking to them also because of Whitewood and looking through that process, because it's economic development or support for economic development and residents to move to our communities. It's what we all need and want. And just how we end up doing that.
I think we move forward.
So I'll start some conversations, bring some more information to the board, but start talking to those and see if there's planting the seed with everybody.
Item 11, reports. 11A is administrator reports. If we have anybody who wants to speak. See that? 11B is board reports. So the stoplight report is there for this month. We are currently at 30, I better zoom in on this, I'm getting old. 38.32%, or 38.32 hours of continuing ed. 22% of board members have completed 10 hours. Community engagement, we have 78% of board members have attended at least one event, 44% have attended at least 3 events, and 22% have attended at least 6 events. And then strategic planning, we're 100% on that except for meeting as our pillar group. So, any questions on the stoplight report? I found the link that I sent out to everyone and got that added in. (11C) Black Hills Special Services Co-op.
Hey, short and sweet. Christmas time, we did it via Zoom. 10 minutes later, we were done.
11D Superintendent.
If you pull up the strategic plan or scorecard that we're working with in the district, I'll give you an update on that. Sorry, with Christmas break and everything, I thought we'd get a chance to have Zoom calls, and I took a little vacation this last week too, so I had about 5 days. My good days were January 2nd and December 26th, and I didn't think many people would be interested in doing Zoom calls on those days. All right. So when you look at our scorecard report here, we have areas green. That means it's actually been completed. Yellow's in process. Red did not start. So we have 2 different areas. September, we measure in September. We measure in December right now as we move forward. So as you look through this, you're seeing a lot of our stuff with the ELA and math scores is a lot of the foundational work for moving forward in our attendance on that. So as we accomplish those, then we're starting to put more planning into action. So there is actually a scorecard for every single building. Okay, curriculum instruction, activities, technology, buildings and grounds, food service, about how they're working towards these. Now, food service is not going to be working on the pillar 1 piece directly for attendance and also looking at the math outcomes of that. They're supporting that through healthy lunches and good breakfasts for kids working forward that, but we don't tie them directly into it. They're focusing on other pieces. Same with technology. So as we continue to work on improving attendance, we really won't know till end of year in June how well we did when we look at our attendance things, but we're monitoring that right now. And when we come to March, we're going to have an update of where we're at that time. Okay. We did change the new attendance policy and communication with that and communicated that out. My question is going to be that we do believe that maybe our attendance policy, even though we tightened it down, it still might be a little too loose for that. So we may be looking at doing some tightening up on that. Feedback from administrative team. When we look at leadership team preparation of survey in advance, we have our survey that went out to all of our staff. That survey data I shared with that. We've now gone to rolling out that information and have those conversations through the process that we've learned there with their building teams. So our building principals are doing that information rollout as I showed you last month. They're doing that, I think by January 16th or 18th, all of those should be done, looking at the data there. Our district service survey is completed. Leadership team will be working on that and bringing that back. That actually came out very well. Talking about how well our services such as food service, looking at that, technology, buildings and grounds, maintenance, how our people say they're being served, including those things, curriculum, etc. Those scores on a Likert score 1 to 5 are almost all above 4 for the first thing there. So we see a lot of people saying how well they're being supported within that, and the comments also very supportive. So that was really good to see in cursory there. I'll give you more information at the February meeting at that. Parent and student survey comes out first week in February. We'll be putting information about that, and that comes out in February where we get how parents view the district and areas there that we can work on and improve on. So that'll be the first time we really got parental survey input coming back from across the district on those items. That's the 3rd level survey that we have at that, and we'll be bringing that back also. Facilities operation, we'll develop a full facilities master schedule at the end of the year for 25-26. That is in process. We still have quite a bit of work to do in that, but it is in process. Then you look at, we'll continue to refine and elevate excellence as staff, students, parents, and caregivers. We'll administer district service survey. As you know, that's the one down there. I actually mentioned that I had in the wrong area. That's out and done. Data coming back on that internally. One thing about unity and engagement, the weekly updates have been well received on that piece internally for that going out. We've done some fine tuning, a little bit. That feedback on that was essentially, don't make it too long. Keep us updated briefly and supply links to stuff. Don't make it a diatribe by Mr. Wormstead on something. So trying to keep that in snippets and then leave links to the information that they want to look at, and other important information from other department heads. Rounding implementation, that's where our leadership team is rounding with our staff and asking the 4 essential questions. What's going well? Do you have everything that you need, et cetera? And then I walked through that last time. That really helps us have a better connection, and it shows a lot of different items that take place. Similar to us coming back up here, our survey results, by having those conversations, our admin team worked quite a bit after the board meeting last time, and we really came to the conclusion of this. Our work balance is the number one issue facing our staff that came out. It's not that the things we're doing aren't important. It feels that our pacing and how much we have them doing is what's causing work overload, and find that balance. And, comments like teaching is becoming so much harder because there's so much thrown at me, but I want to do this stuff, but it's coming too fast. So really drove a conversation among our admin team about how we keep doing what we're doing, but we find a better pacing schedule to help our staff be more successful within that and stay still focused on the classroom. That was probably the biggest feedback that we got from that staff survey across all areas, is that we know it's important, but can we find a better way to pace this? I know with staff development, Beth has really taken that to heart and is looking at that, how we do that differently. And then coming down to internal rounding implementation, of course, we started that, recognize support. A big thing that comes with that is when, who has been extremely helpful to you in the past 90 days. Sending that out and recognizing that they've been, I tell, hey, Tim, he says that Justin's been very helpful. I contact Justin, say, Justin's been very helpful. Tim said, you've been very helpful on X, Y, and Z, and very specific. What that shows is that the leader knows, but also that the person's receiving praise from their colleagues and peers. That is a huge buy-in to your culture and community. So first year, we're truly rolling that out entirely. We're seeing some positive effects from that. A piece that I think we're starting with, and with our monthly online newsletters, we've done it before. We're trying to do them well. Our external reach to beyond our parents. We have the group emails. Everything goes out. Principals are emailing the parents about what's taking place. We're sending out messages. We have our monthly newsletters. What we're not really receiving is shipping that out past our parents to our community members as much. And that's where we'll have our state of the district for last year and information about what people did well, where our enrollment's at, our finances, our test scores, all that stuff's going to be out for people. It's a little bit later with all the budget issues than we planned on having. Usually it comes out in November, December. It's going to be coming out here in February or end of January for everybody to see. But how do we connect with the people who don't have kids in school that are parents, that aren't parents, about the good things happening across our district and all of our communities? I think that's been a constant struggle. We used to do a large newsletter that took a lot of time and commitment. We don't have a communications director anymore, so that makes it more difficult. So we're still looking for ideas how we can expand that reach to tell about the great things that happen in our district. That's consistent. Everybody uses social media. That seems to hit a certain niche. We have our information where I'm out talking to Kiwanis and other groups. That hits another small group. But how do we continue to do that? That's an area that I don't have all the answers how to expand that reach. So if you come up with anything, we could use any help and support, because we have a long reaching area in our district to get communication and for people to be informed. Legislative session, move on to that. That starts tomorrow. Interesting bill, Senate Bill 58. I've asked Senator Carley about this. I sent him an email today when I read it. I haven't seen a bill drop for a revenue source replacement. It's basically, they took the tax bill for city, county, tax laws for city, county schools, and basically moved them all to zero in every category for property tax. And I just asked, what's a replacement revenue source? I'm not sure if they're proposing a replacement revenue source. But I just saw that hit the hopper, Senate Bill 58. You can read it. I got to do a little bit more research on it, but I did send Senator Carly a question about that just to figure out how that would work with that, because there'll be some popularity behind, eliminating all property taxes, but city, counties, and schools, that's the basis because we don't have income tax in our state. Not sure how that'd be replaced yet, so we'll see. A lot of other things be hitting the ground on legislative stuff. I will probably be at the Capitol more days than I like, back and forth to Pier for stuff. But I think I've got booked out 3 days between now and before February 12th right now at the Capitol so far. So before all the bills hit. Questions for me?
Oh, question, you mentioned you're going to the Capitol. Will you let us know what days you're going?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a couple of insurance meetings, so I'll be there, and also then just reach out to the legislators. But yeah, trying to time up as many trips. Yep.
And if you have time in your schedule, try and get to some of the Cracker Barrels that are local, whether they're in Pennington County, Meade, Lawrence County, etc. There will be. I seen the first one posted for Piedmont.
I think it happened last weekend.
Did it?
Yeah, they did an early one last weekend.
So that happened awfully quick, I thought, but
It's like a pre.
yeah.
It's like a pre-Cracker Barrel kind of a situation.
Yeah, it was pre. But
So we'll have another one, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yep. Oh, and those come out through the LAN also, those notices. So if you haven't joined that LAN email network for school board members to get all that information on pressing bills and Cracker Barrels and everything else, Tanya sent that out a couple times, I think, to you, and so is Associated School Boards, to make sure you just put your email in to get all that information. And then I'll be giving more updates as things start hitting the hopper here. I think there's 118 bills as of Monday or Friday that have already been preloaded.
If you're looking for it in your email, it would have came from Tyler Pickner.
Yep, Tyler Pickner.
You just sent another one.
Did he?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
Last call for land. Legislative Action Network. So.
And everyone can sign up for that. You just click on the link, and it'll say, "Are you the representative for your board?" Everybody can sign up for that, and it just gets you updates. 11D1.
Sorry, one more thing here. On the insurance, can you give us an update on having the school system's insurance going with the state? Is there an update on that? That seemed to be one way that we could save money.
Well, I don't know if that's going to gain ground with the legislature or not. I have no updates of whether that's going to move forward. I know there's legislators asking questions, and the questions have been sent to from appropriations into the people that answer the question. So I'm not sure if that's gaining momentum or not. But Jorgensen did send some key questions up into the state about that. So the thing is, state does a lot of self-insurance for property. Okay, and then buy some excess cost insurance because they're spread out so far for risk other than peer with that. So they do have things insurance and some self-insured that. So we have to see whether it's going to gain any momentum. I don't think it's a 1-year thing. I think it'll be a couple years before they can sort it all out if it does happen.
11D1, Teacher of the Year and Support Staff of the Year nominations. Teacher of the Year and Support Staff of the Year nominations are being accepted for 27. Nominations are welcomed by parents, community members, and staff members. Item 12, upcoming calendar events. January 19th, no school, MLK Day. January 20th, Finance Committee meeting at 4:30 p.m. January 21st is a 2-hour late start for students, staff professional development day. January 26th, Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting at 3:30, and January 26th, Policy Committee meeting at 5:30. Item 13, adjournment. Do we have a motion? Megan with the motion, Lee with the second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.